In this life, you don't need to shout to be respected. You only need to know how to set boundaries. The problem is that most of us react from emotion. Someone insults us and we explode. Someone imposes on us and we argue until we're drained. And after all that, we still don't gain respect. We only look like we've lost control. Stoic philosophy is clear. Real power is not in subduing others, but in governing yourself. This video gives you 5 lines, short, calm, non-threatening. Use them at the right moment and the room goes quiet. The person in front of you adjusts their tone, and you walk away not as the one who won an argument, but as the one who compelled respect. This is not a communication trick. This is inner discipline. This is your power. I understand your perspective, but I disagree. May sound like a polite line. In fact, it is a psychological boundary. It is the moment you tell the world, I am listening, but I do not belong to your emotional orbit. At the level of communication, this sentence does 2 things at once. First, it gives the other person a sense of being acknowledged. When people feel rejected, they fight. When they feel recognized, they lower their guard. Second, it protects the independence of your thinking without triggering their defensiveness. You are not saying, you are wrong. You are saying, I am different from you. You do not threaten their honor, so they do not need to counterattack to save face. You choose reason over impulse. This is a first principle in Stoic thought. Do not let others' emotions force you to react the way they want. Epictetus is clear. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you say, I disagree, you are choosing your own response instead of being pulled into their emotional orbit. Another important aspect. This sentence asserts your identity without provoking direct confrontation. Most conflicts escalate because people treat disagreement as a personal attack. When someone says, you're wrong, the brain reads it as a threat to status and instantly prepares to strike back. Heart rate rises, voices climb, body language closes. But when you say, I understand your perspective, you signal that you are not denying they have a point. You do not fracture their ego. You place them in the position of being heard. And because of that, you purchase the space to add the next part. But I do not agree. That is disagreement without attack. The Stoic does not chase an instant win through noisy emotion. The Stoic seeks something durable to keep one's dignity without lowering anyone else. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. In other words, you do not need to appease the other person with false agreement. You also do not need to crush them to prove you are right. You only need to speak your truth, plainly and calmly. This sentence is also a test of inner strength. To say, I understand your perspective, but I disagree. You must stand firm in your own judgment. You do not seek permission. You do not ask anyone to approve your thinking. You accept the possibility that the other person will not like that answer, and you still hold your ground. This is the model of self-mastery that Stoic philosophy marks as the sign of a strong person. Your values do not waver just because someone applies pressure. Seneca reminds us that most of the suffering we manufacture lives in the mind, not in the world. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The fear of disagreeing is often imagined. If I disagree, they will hate me. If I stand apart, I will be isolated. In reality, most adults respect clarity. They may not like hearing you say no, but they understand the person who dares to say no. There is a deeper layer. When you say, I understand your perspective, but I disagree, you separate emotion from judgment. You speak from a place of calm, not reaction. This earns respect, not fear. The one who shouts tries to intimidate. The one who stays composed forces others to examine themselves. A person who remains tranquil in conflict projects an unspoken power. You do not need to I'm right. You only need to stand still under pressure and state clearly, I am different from you. In communication psychology, this state lowers the temperature of the exchange because you do not supply the adversarial energy that the other side can cling to. In Stoicism, this is emotional discipline. If someone else loses their temper and you lose yours too, you have handed them control over you. I don't find that appropriate. This sentence is a door that closes softly but locks firmly. It is not an attack. It is not an ego punch. It is a boundary. When someone mocks you in front of others, when they joke too far about your body, your family, your values, the common reflex is either to swallow it for the sake of peace or to explode to put them in their place. Both reactions cost you control. Swallowing for too long trains others to treat stepping over your line as normal. Exploding shifts the story from there. The Stoic does not endorse blind endurance. They do not encourage silent suffering to keep the peace at all costs. Stoicism is not bowing your head to let things slide. Stoicism is self-mastery. Epictetus stresses that your dignity must not be bargained away for someone else's passing emotions. No man is free who is not master of himself. Mastery of self is not only managing anger, it is also actively defining the minimum standard of respect you accept in every interaction. When you say, I don't find that appropriate, you are exercising that mastery. You are saying, I will not take part in a conversation whose basic terms have been lowered to the level of insult. Ecchymotic behavior to your overreaction. But when you say calmly, clearly, without shaking and without nervous laughing, I don't find that appropriate, you put attention exactly where it belongs. On the behavior, not on your emotions, not on their character, on the moral boundary of the interaction. The key here is the structure of the sentence. You do not say, you're rude. You do not label their character. You describe the behavior and name it as inappropriate in this space. Meaning, I see the boundary, I state it, and I expect you to adjust right now. When you do that, you transmit a deeper message. I respect myself enough not to let you define how others treat me. This is a form of active self-protection, quiet but weighty. And this is where Stoic philosophy enters as a foundation, not just a communication technique. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you allow your surroundings to be filled with toxic jokes and forms of belittlement disguised as just for fun, your mind will gradually default to seeing that as normal. On a practical level, you start discounting yourself to fit the level of respect others are applying to you. But when you stop it immediately, you protect more than that moment. You protect the long-term trajectory of your psychology. You are teaching your brain that the standard here is respect. This line also has a strategic effect. It slows the tempo. In a group, boundary-crossing jokes often lean on the audience effect. One person attacks, others laugh, and the target forces a smile so as not to kill the vibe. You break that loop with a short, calm sentence delivered at an even pace. You strip the situation of its entertainment energy. The other person has to examine themselves because the atmosphere no longer stands with them. You do not need a 3-minute lecture. You do not need to recount how you were hurt. You only need to show the room where the game just changed its rules. At the deepest level, this sentence is a vow to yourself. I will not betray my values just to be seen as pleasant. In Stoic practice, self-respect is not a feeling of self-love wrapped in pretty words. Self-respect is a specific act that protects your dignity in a specific moment. This is that act. When you dare to say, I don't find that appropriate, you are teaching others how they are allowed to approach you, with respect or not at all. Let's talk when we can do it respectfully. This is not a retreat. It is a statement of terms. When the other side starts raising their voice, interrupting, or going personal, most people either match the anger or go silent to let it pass. Both forfeit control. If you shout back, you let them drag you onto their ground. If you fall silent out of fear of more noise, you let them define how they are allowed to speak to you. This line chooses a third path. It says, I am not here to win by yelling. I am here to exchange as two adults. If we cannot reach that level, this conversation pauses right now. It is a moral break, a boundary line, a way to make sure to respect the minimum price for continued interaction with you. Stoic philosophy always centers on inner self-mastery. Self-mastery is not only about keeping calm in your head. It is the ability to shape the context of a conversation so it does not swallow your dignity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you say, "Let's talk when we can do it respectfully," you are enacting that line. You are not forcing the other person to change their feelings on the spot. You are not trying to fix them. You are choosing the environment you are willing to join. You signal, I do not belong in this conversation if it does not match the quality of my emotional standards. This is a clear shift of power. Before, the other person controlled the tempo with volume, interruptions, and the level of attack. Now, you control the tempo with conditions. The conversation continues only if the standard of respect is restored. If not, it stops, and the right to stop belongs to you. This is exactly where you see why this line is not avoidance. It demands courage. To say it, you must accept the risk that the other person will be displeased because you no longer accept the chaos of their rules. You must be willing to trade surface smoothness for inner peace. Epictetus is blunt. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This does not ask you to accept humiliation. It says that if you want to live by your inner standards, you must accept that others may call you difficult, uncooperative, or making a fuss. You no longer soothe their feelings by letting them continue behavior that disrespects you. You choose to let them be uncomfortable with your boundaries rather than let yourself be swallowed by their verbal aggression. That is emotional maturity. From here, something crucial happens. You teach others how they are allowed to show up in your presence. Seneca wrote, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they do not have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have." You cannot force people to be polite, but you always have the right to refuse participation when respect is gone. This sentence is exactly that refusal. It sets a clear frame of reference. If you want to continue speaking with me, you will lower your voice, stop attacking, and listen in the true sense. If you do not do that, the conversation ends here. When that message is delivered with steady resolve, people who are riding a wave of emotion are often forced to recalibrate because they have just realized they no longer have the power to draft you as a prop for their anger. And when they adjust, order returns on the terms you choose, not on the terms of chaos. In other words, this boundary protects you not only in that moment, it also lays the foundation for every interaction that follows. People who once shouted in your face will no longer do so as easily because they know you will end the exchange instead of standing there to absorb it. People who once cut you off again and again will learn to wait for you to finish because they understand that if they do not respect your pace of speech, they forfeit the right to hear your answer at all. This is the long-term effect of consistent dignity. Respect is not something you extract with threats. Respect is what you compel others to adjust to keep access to you. And this sentence is the clearest expression of that. I would like not to continue this conversation. This is the line of someone who has seen the true nature of the situation and refuses to keep feeding it. You no longer try to explain to someone who does not want to understand. You no longer try to persuade an ego that only wants to win, to outtalk you, to have the last word. You stop, not because you are weak, because you decide that your inner peace matters more than the need to prove something in front of the other person. This is self-mastery at a very high level. In reality, what keeps us stuck in toxic arguments is usually not truth but pride. I have to finish saying my piece. I can't let them think they're right. I must answer back. But Stoic philosophy looks directly at that mechanism and asks, to what end? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control." When you say, "I would like not to continue this conversation," you exercise exactly that right. You choose not to keep burning energy in a space you cannot change. You release yourself from the obligation to react. And in that moment, you become the one who controls the tempo of the conflict instead of the one dragged into it. I would like not to continue this conversation. This is the line of someone who has seen the true nature of the situation and refuses to keep feeding it. You no longer try to explain to someone who does not want to understand. You no longer try to persuade an ego that only wants to win, to outtalk you, to have the last word. You stop, not because you are weak, because you decide that your inner peace matters more than the need to prove something in front of the other person. This is self-mastery at a very high level. In reality, what keeps us stuck in toxic arguments is usually not truth, but pride. I have to finish saying my piece. I can't let them think they're right. I must answer back. But Stoic philosophy looks directly at that mechanism and asks, to what end? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control." When you say, "I would like not to continue this conversation," you exercise exactly that right. You choose not to keep burning energy in a space you cannot change. You release yourself from the obligation to react. And in that moment, you become the one who controls the tempo of the conflict instead of the one dragged into it. The key point to see is that this line is not an escape from emotion. It is a refusal to participate in emotional violence. In a toxic exchange, the structure is clear. The other person is no longer listening. They are only waiting for their turn to strike back. They twist words. They go for the person. They flip the content into your fault. The conversation is no longer about finding what is right together, but about who crushes whom. At that point, continuing to argue is no longer, I am defending the truth, but I am defending my ego. Epictetus says, when someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval. If your value does not need their validation, then you do not need to stay to correct their perception of you. You only need to step out, and by stepping out, you pull oxygen from the burning flame. You starve the conflict of its fuel. You remove the entertainment from the other person's hands, the one who may be enjoying dragging you down to feel higher. That is your opinion, and I respect it, but I do not share it. This is the language of someone mature on the inside, not opposition, not provocation, a clear assertion of the right to think independently under pressure to conform. In relationships that feel like family, close friends, trusted colleagues, or those with higher status, there is often a form of soft coercion. I think this way, and if you differ, you're wrong or you don't fully understand. That pressure rarely arrives as a shout. It arrives as disappointment, hints, repetition, and comparison. You feel you must nod just to keep the peace. But when you say, that is your opinion and I respect it, but I do not share it, you remove that cord from your neck. You send two messages at once. I do not deny your worth, and I will not sell myself cheaply for the comfort of an easy atmosphere. The structure of this sentence is subtle. The first part, that is your opinion and I respect it, keeps the other person from feeling negated, from feeling that their intellectual honor is under attack. You grant them ownership of their belief. You make it clear, that belief belongs to you, not to me. This matters because many conflicts do not ignite from the content of the disagreement, but from the feeling, you don't respect me. By addressing their defensiveness first, you cool the emotional side of the exchange. Then you can say the second part, but I do not share it. This is holding your ground. This is a boundary of thought. I hear you. I understand you, but I am not you. Stoic philosophy centers on preserving the self-mastery of reason. Epictetus is explicit. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them. In other words, what unsettles you internally is not that someone holds a different opinion, but that you force yourself to accept that opinion just to keep the peace. You betray your own judgment to soothe another. That self-betrayal is the real source of pain. When you say, I do not share it, you refuse to inflict that injury on yourself. You choose to keep your intellectual integrity, even before someone you love or respect. From here, connected to the earlier move. In the previous section, we ended toxic exchanges with I would like not to continue this conversation. That applies when basic respect disappears and you leave the table to protect your peace. But in many important relationships, you do not want to leave the table. You want to stay, keep the connection, and not lose yourself. That is exactly when this fifth line appears as a quiet form of power. You do not withdraw from the relationship. You withdraw from the imposition. Marcus Aurelius wrote, ask yourself at every moment, is this essential? That question applies to disputes over beliefs. Do we truly need to turn every difference into a battlefield to crown a single version of truth? The answer is usually no. Many things are simply life stances, personal choices, and individual paths. Someone's wish for you to live by their formula does not make that formula true. You have the right to refuse a uniform for the mind, and you can do it without breaking the relationship. Seneca reminds us, no man was ever wise by chance. Wisdom is not yielding to please the crowd. Wisdom is standing firm in your own thinking, knowing why you believe what you believe, and taking responsibility for that choice. When you say, I do not share it, you accept that responsibility. This matters because it frees you from the blame mechanism later. You no longer live someone else's life and then resent them in silence. You choose your path, you accept its consequences, and therefore, you do not need bitterness. Finally, this sentence is a declaration of cognitive independence. It affirms that you are a complete thinking individual, not an extension of anyone's emotions or beliefs, including those you love. It shows that the respect you give others is the same standard of respect you require in return. I will not change you, and you will not bend me. And that is the foundation of every mature relationship. We will not always think the same, but we will respect each other enough to allow one another to be ourselves. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what is coming will change you. Tell me in the comments here. I very much want to read your comment.